Remember the early days of 3D Nintendo? Back in the N64 Wii era, when they used to reuse game engines that they spent a lot of years working on in order to make a sequel instead of starting fresh all over again. Majora's Mask and Mario Galaxy 2 come to mind when I think about those sequels that got the same treatment, and that's how I would exactly describe Bowser's Fury. Released at the same time and even the same game as Super Mario 3D World, it could have honestly been sold separately. Cause as I explained before, the game is so completely different to what Super Mario 3D World has to offer. Super Mario 3D World already being a game filled with extra content that it didn't honestly need a separate expansion. But hey, I'm not one to complain, it's an extra game and I'm absolutely happy with it. But unlike Mario Galaxy 2, the game engine is completely reworked to work on a completely different format compared to the original. I mean, it still carries over a lot of the game's mechanics and a lot of the game's movement, but everything is reworked in a certain way to be more of its own thing instead of being just the same thing as, more Super Mario 3D World, which is kind of head scratching because I didn't think they'd actually do something like this. Since most of Nintendo's other re-releases usually just don't bring any extra content, instead bring over some DLC instead of reworking the engine to work in a completely different format. New Super Mario Bros. U bringing in the Luigi expansion and really nothing more, and this being its own self-contained story and game more akin to Super Mario Odyssey rather than Super Mario 3D World. It's honestly quite the shock to see and experience. It's kind of like a tonal whiplash when you go from Super Mario 3D World to Bowser's Fury and how different it all is. But it works so goddamn well that I am honestly shocked that this style of Mario game hasn't been attempted before. Because unlike Super Mario Odyssey, where you just have one big level with a ton of different objectives and shines, stars, or whatever the fuck, lunars, I don't even remember what they're called. You have a lot of stuff to collect and a lot of objectives to do. Bowser's Fury is an entirely completely different beast. It's a big open world with a lot of shit to do. With a lot of levels, a lot of exploration, and tons of objectives that kind of repeat themselves a little bit a lot, but they're different enough and challenging enough every time you go through them that they're a blast. And given that the levels are always changing on how you progress, and given the amount of freedom that you're giving to complete those tasks, it can be as easy or as difficult as you want it to be. You finish a mission and you go to another island or do a small Plessy side mission, which yes, you can ride Plessy in this game, and it's honestly pretty fun. And I am glad that they implemented that, since most of the world is covered by sea, and given Plessy's natural swimming abilities, you can ride on her and swim everywhere that you want to at completely ludicrous speeds or as slow as you want. It's honestly your choice, but it's honestly very exhilarating and freeing. And given the music that you're hearing in the background while you're riding Plessy, it's pretty fun. But you ride her for a while, you come back, and there's something new for you to do. Always. No matter what, every time you go back to one of the islands, you always have something different to do, because every single island has 5 challenges, and those 5 challenges will differ. Some are repeated, some aren't. They're all pretty fun. Something else that you have in this game is Little Bowser Jr., which brings a lot of personality into the game as he tries to help you as little, as often, or never. The way that he acts is determined by the player, as in the beginning, you're walking down the same road that you did in Super Mario 3D World, and then you see some black goop and Mario gets Super Mario Sunshine flashbacks, and he starts worrying about going back to jail. So he starts running around, seeing what happened, and he gets sucked up by this black goop and ends up in a completely different world, which I thought it was going to be this Sprixie world, but it's not. It's completely different and its own different beast. And the beginning section of this game is honestly pretty fucking great, as you see Bowser's silhouette in the background and seeing him shooting his Giga Fire at you everywhere. It's a pretty big spectacle. And after that, you get to interact with Bowser Jr. as he tries to explain to you what happened to him and his father, where they were trying to mess with Black Goop, and they seemingly failed to do so, corrupting Bowser and turning him to this furious hunk of a beast. Honestly, Fury Bowser's design is fucking amazing. And at first, Mario's not having any of it. I mean, look at this man's face. Do you think this man's convinced? I don't think so. But Mario, being the good boy that he is, he agrees to help Bowser Jr. out. And that's where you get the choice to have him help you a lot, a little, or not at all. It's your choice, and the fact that you even have that choice in a Nintendo game is actually pretty good and something that they should do more often. But that doesn't mean that Bowser Jr. is always on your side, as when Mario takes damage, he'll cackle to himself in joy, which is honestly pretty cute, given that, you know, it's a little personality that we usually don't get to see a lot, since he's always angry and always trying to take you down. Seeing that kind of action honestly kind of speaks to a lot of the polish that this game introduces, like having him play with a baseball when you're just sitting around and looking at cats, having the cats coming around and interacting with you and snuggling you when you're in your cat suit, having them run away when you aren't, having them turn evil when Bowser's fury reigns free. There's just a lot of cute little details like that, and it's pretty cool to see. Graphically, I think the game looks on par to Super Mario 3D World as well. It's the same engine and the same character models and the same lighting style, but I think they have more awareness as to how best the characters will look in certain lighting conditions, which is why the light doesn't really shift that much per se, so that way the characters don't look like absolute clay most of the time, like in Super Mario 3D World in some levels. Most levels, and that's not even including the world-based screen space reflections that look absolutely insane, and I thought couldn't be possible on the Nintendo Switch given the amount of detail that is in these reflections. All of that on a consistent 60 FPS most of the time, because if there's one issue that I have with Bowser's Fury is the resolution drops, the lack of anti-aliasing that is in the game, since most everything looks jaggy as fuck and doesn't look pleasant to the eye, which at first, when I first got into the game, I had a belly laugh when I first got into the game and saw how it looked, because I've been playing a lot of my PC and everything looks so nice and smooth on my PC at just 1080p, not 4K, 1080p. And seeing the Switch struggle to stay at relatively 720p in docked mode without anti-aliasing or any sort of visual aid to help in the game, it did not hold up pretty good at the beginning. My impressions were very bad, but as the game went by, I got used to it. Something that I did not get used to though was the constant frame drops, because they're relatively sparse in the beginning of the game. In the later sections of the game, you can see the Switch is really struggling to keep a constant 60 FPS, especially when Fury Bowser is around and causing havoc. The Switch, I can see that bitch causing a fire. I swear to God, I saw smoke in my room at one point. That's how bad it got, because God, everything just went to slow motion and it was honestly pretty unplayable at that point. I was concerned, to say the least, and it makes me really long for a Switch 2 to take advantage of these more powerful games with more ambition, because the Switch that we have now, even Nintendo's developers are struggling to keep us at constant 60 FPS. It's kind of sad to see. Sad to see them cut their ambitions to make it work within such a tiny console with weaker hardware than your regular PS4. And even now, the PS5 and Xbox Series X, and even my PC, we need something more powerful, honestly. But other than those smaller issues, that's honestly pretty much everything that I have to say about the game. It's a nice step up from Super Mario 3D World, and even a nice side experiment to Super Mario Odyssey. And I can't wait to see what they do next with the Mario formula. I wish they would go with this kind of formula, but a little more refined, with hopefully a better frame rate. But now, If you'll excuse me, I am extremely tired and I need to go to sleep.